the happy birthday to you.
It's so weird.
I know. Both of us can't take it seriously.
You did the pop star.
I was giving you everything I had for this one.
Thank you. I feel so special.
Do you feel 31 on this brisk March day?
I don't. No. And actually, I was having a conversation. So I'm still in Austin while we're recording this. But at South by Southwest, I ran into a girl that we went to college with. She was a Theta a year younger than me, Brittany. She started a company with Jay Shetty. She works in the podcasting space. Anyway, we were talking and she was just talking about how she was going through a hard time. And I paused her and I'm like, have you heard of a Saturn return? And we got into a whole conversation about Saturn return and how apparently her Saturn return is almost 2 years long.
I mean, what do you feel about yours? I feel like yours is...
Well, that's why I bring it up because I'm remember how I really purely thought I was going through my Saturn return and then we looked up the actual dates and it hadn't even started yet. And then I was like, oh,
it hadn't started.
What's this then?
Although someone commented, I don't know if it was on Campfire Stories or where it was, but someone said the other day, they were like, wow, Sabrina's Saturn return is starting to look real good on her. Because Saturn return doesn't have to be negative. It can be about exploring new things and having some cool moments in your life happen to you. And people were like, she's starting to wear it well.
It turned a corner at a certain point and is less bleak, but it's still returning, Saturning. And it's a return to sender, please. No, but this is an Encounters episode.
It's your birthday episode. But again, we're batch recording a bunch of episodes. I feel like we say it every episode now because we're like, woo, 5th recording in one day. But that is just the reality of when you have to
have a baby,
fill up 3 or 4 months worth of episodes.
Fill up your uterus with a child.
Lose the ability to breathe. So we're recording them mighty early, but I think it's still fun to celebrate. And
it is.
If I may say, I do feel like the past few episodes, I have been kind of already pre-celebrating your birthday because I knew you were going to pick something dark. I knew you wanted demonic because you always do every year. And so I was trickling a lot of dark episodes into the past few for you.
Thank you so much. It's very, very kind of you.
August has the darkness.
It is amazing that we have so many things that we get to celebrate in August because I do feel like the tides in the universe and in our lives really, really shift in August, not just because it's our birthdays and our podcast anniversary, but as we transition from August to September, the spooky season just births and breathes so much energy into our world.
It does.
And so I feel like this is like a teaser to Halloween and it's the start of our season. We thrive.
You're right.
We thrive
because July 5th is really when we start to kind of feel it in our bones. Some of us are awakened then.
Yeah.
But you're right. September 1st, there's a certain smell in the air, an extra whisper in the wind. And we know Halloween is coming.
I smell it in the air. Hounds for Halloween. Halloween hounds.
Oh, I saw something. My whole TikTok is just gardening videos. And I don't even have a garden yet. But I saw the most amazing thing. Someone made a trellis and then they had their pumpkins grow over the wire trellis so that the pumpkins drop down through the wires and they're hanging there growing. And so then when Halloween season comes, you can just literally go and it's hanging above you and just pluck it like an apple. You just twist and pluck your pumpkin. I want to do that.
Okay. I feel like you have a lot of garden aspirations.
I do.
You do.
Help me, people. But help Sabrina by sending any exorcism, possession, dark, demonic episodes to our inbox so that we don't have to just cluster them specifically for her birthday, but we can do it year round.
I will say it was hard for me to pick because we do have a lot of dark. I think I wrote dark, demonic, spooky, scary. That was my theme for my birthday encounters. Yes. And it was hard to pick because there are quite a few. And you know what? I did something that you might not have expected me to do, which is I picked something to read at the very end of this episode that will hopefully leave all of you a little less terrified and perhaps prepared and provided with the tools to defeat demons after listening to this.
This is unlike you, but I appreciate this. This is growth, you know?
This is 31.
This is 31. You're giving yourself what you want, which is these darker, spookier tales. But then you're also recognizing that the people around you maybe will be shaking in their boots more than you.
Shaking in their boobies. But I also want to clarify that maybe I've changed because I picked this, but truly had our listener not emailed this a week ago, this would not be happening. So, but I'm going to read that at the end of the episode.
Okay.
I am, however, going to begin with a longer story from our good pal, Kristen, who is one of our most haunted friends on our Patreon and is plagued with
very haunted.
So many hauntings. And this one is called The Time a Demon Came Out of My Nanny's Ouija Board and I Astral Projected to Hell.
What the fuck? Kristen has so many stories like this too.
Yeah. Kristen starts this off with a dad joke. What do you call Sven when he's messing with campfire stories?
I don't know.
A toasty ghosty.
This is like the perfect email for you for your birthday.
I know.
It's everything you love.
It is.
Darkness
Kristen,
and dad jokes.
You know me. You see me. I feel seen. Okay. Kristen starts with a joke and then we get dark. So this is the story of when I saw a demon for the first time. I was about 8 years old and I was trying to fall asleep on the couch and couldn't. Sleep all day from random fatigue, stay awake all night. I was terrified of something happening. My sister was sleeping in the room with my grandmother. She refused to sleep alone in this house and would actually sleep on the dog bed in my grandmother's room. I refused to sleep in the back of this house because that is where I constantly felt watched. So there I was, laying on the couch alone, holding the blankets to me as close as possible, and I was watching the hallway. I had considered laying the other direction so I couldn't see anything, but the unknown scared me more. That is when it happened. A black shadow mist slipped out of the hallway, right on the right side. It slithered, not on the floor, but on the ceiling, and tumbled down the wall like a black tumbleweed. I watched it silently, roll down the wall, across the floor, and then hide beneath the table, which was straight across from me. It was then that I was able to get a good look at it. Its eyes glowed red, and the mist dissipated, revealing a humanoid face, but it had a wild mane of black hair. But what scared me the most is that I realized the reason it tumbled and crawled was because it had many arms, like a human spider with arms or goat legs.
That is a thing of nightmares.
There's a picture at the bottom of this email that is kind of what an example
what it looks
of what
like,
Kristen
a drawing
is
of it. Okay. Ew.
Yeah. We stared at each other until the next thing I remember is waking up in the morning. I'm not sure how the heck I fell asleep because I had been so wired that night. So I was like, it must have just been a dream. But it wasn't, because whatever this was followed me to my own house. It's important to note that my grandmother was a devout Christian. I don't remember seeing crosses on the walls, but I told her one day that I didn't like her house and she asked why. I admitted that it scared me and gave me nightmares, which is when my devoted grandmother made me promise to never use a Ouija board. Of course, I asked, "Why, Grandma?" And she proceeded to tell me, because I used one all the time. I thought I was talking to someone I knew and used it almost every night. I guess back in the old days, before there was Facebook scrolling, she used to scroll the spiritual plane. Do you want to know the reason she stopped using it? Well, a black shadow came out of it and proceeded to choke her. The sheeps wrapped around her tighter and tighter until she cried out to Jesus. It left her alone, but did not leave her house. I later learned my uncle, her son, who died young early in his 20s in the 1980s from the AIDS epidemic, I believe that was who we wanted to contact, and the demon pretended to be her son.
Oh, that's so, I hate that. I hate that demons will take advantage of people and who they're, because people are opening themselves up so much and they so desperately want contact with someone that it does sometimes take a little bit longer to register that they're not speaking to that person. And it's the cruelest trick
I know
in the demon book.
It is. It's almost, because when spiritualism became such a big thing, it was like during all the wars and like a lot of people were dying. And there was a lot of like humans taking advantage of other humans' pain and their loss and like trying to, you know, make them believe that they were communicating with their loved ones. But at least that offered some solace and was like a positive thing, whereas demons do it in such a malicious, like taking advantage way. So after I learned this, I avoided the house as much as possible and refused to spend the night. But my sister got really close to our nanny and stayed over there a lot. She never really said anything to me, and then I also kept things to myself. But fast forward to when I was 19, sadly, my nanny had passed away. She was 86 years old, but was surrounded by her family and was smiling as she reached up to heaven.
Aww.
I like to believe that she's in heaven, and this has been confirmed in my dreams later. So my parents hire a family friend to go over there and repair some things and get the house ready to sell. This man came back with stories and eventually refused to return, saying, either I'm losing my mind or that house is haunted. He told my parents that the doors would slam and lock by themselves, and I'm talking deadbolts. There was a ladder that randomly fell over by itself. The kitchen cabinets were painted and left open by day, but when he returned, they were all closed. His stuff would go missing and end up in odd places he didn't remember going. So then we sold the house. And this last year, my sister starts to open up about spooky witch things and tells me the following. She had horrible nightmares. The sink in my nanny's house ran blood. And when she was sleeping there, she would have dreams that my nanny was hanging from the ceiling. I was shocked to hear this because these were the exact same nightmares that I would have. She also sensed how horrible the energy was back in the house. We both had an unsettling sensation when we walked down that hallway. It felt like it would elongate and we'd be stuck walking in a never-ending hallway. She also saw a black shadow in Nanny's room, and we both hated what we called the red room because the bed sheets and the curtains were red. It almost seemed like an old Gothic room. Then there was the yellow room, and it was deceiving. It was decorated like sunshine, but felt like prison. Nanny told her that the demon would lay on top of her as she slept. Turns out my sister knew our grandmother tried to have the house blessed several times, and eventually the priest refused to go back. So we had a memorial service there, and the priest stopped by, but he seemed super uncomfortable, which now makes sense knowing that he had been there multiple times to try to bless it and was scared of it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe he didn't approve of us having beer at his memorial service, but didn't make the connection that he knew the house. Oh, and guess what? Do you want to know where she kept that Ouija board that she used all the time? In the hall closet, that same hall that we were terrified of that felt like it kept going and was going to suck us in. And she was so protective of that closet and refused to let us ever open it. It was always locked, and I had forgotten about that until last night when my sister and I were chatting about it. Turns out that hall closet also led to the attic, and I used to hear noises from the attic when I was sleeping. So maybe the thing lived up there, and that's why I saw it slither down from the ceiling.
Oh, yes. And it sounds like the grandma knew, too. The fact that there was no way she was going to let someone even in the closet.
Right. She
where the Ouija
went out of her
board was.
way
like,
to
there was
lock
clearly
it.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the dangerous thing.
Anyway, before we sold the house and after several cleaning trips, we apparently missed the Ouija board until it was my dad's last day there. He did one more sweep, and guess what he spotted poking out a corner in the closet? You guessed it, the Ouija board. He told us later that he couldn't believe it had been missed because it was so obvious. And guess what he did? That idiot brought the board over to my parents' house.
Wait, also the fact that Kristen's saying they can't believe that it was missed, that makes me think that the Ouija board was hiding.
Yeah. I think almost like
it didn't want to be found early on because maybe the chances of it being found then, it would have been discarded. But now it's
exactly
like, oh, look, the Ouija board. Let's bring it over. Let's bring it home.
Right. They had already done all their donations and their discarding of things. And now it's like the final sweep. You got to take it with you. So my dad brought it home and my mom flipped a lid, freaked out, told him to either burn it or put it in the dumpster. And my dad goes, but it was my mom's. My mom looks at my dad and goes, I don't care if it was the Pope's himself. You are not bringing demons into my house. Then she chased him outside with her holy water. My mom is not currently Catholic, but was raised Catholic. And I guess there are some things you don't forget. I'm so glad my mom saw my dad trying to put the Ouija board into our attic because can you imagine?
Especially because there's that creature that's attached to it that Kristen's already seen. It's not just a creepy Ouija board in communication.
Exactly.
It's like something potentially attached to the board as well.
Yes, but as we're about to find out, bringing the board home wouldn't have changed anything because as Kristen mentioned earlier, that entity did follow her home. Okay, so remember how I had mentioned it followed me home? Well, shortly after that experience I had described in the beginning of this email, I had the worst nightmare of my life. But only more recently did I realize that I had actually in this nightmare astral projected to hell. I've astral projected several times and witnessed real life events that were later confirmed the next day. So I know what this feels like. Usually I float up and I fly towards the event that is pulling me in. I'll hover and watch over the people and whatever is occurring. So this night was different. I woke up in my dream and had a vision of my walls catching fire. It didn't feel hot, and I was not impacted by the fire at all. Suddenly, I felt my soul get pulled down. I actually tried to fight it, and I felt like I was swimming, but the current was too powerful. I closed my eyes until the falling sensation stopped. I remember I was sitting down, lying against something. It was a stone wall. I hesitantly opened my eyes, and confused, I looked around. How did I get here? Everything felt so real. It was a dungeon of sorts, and I could hear distant screams. Which this reminds me, someone's email we read a couple encounters ago where they like had that dream and they were in a locked concrete room that there was like blood from another person being there, you know?
Yeah.
The room glowed orange-red from an unseen light source, and I realized I was actually sitting on a table of sorts. The feeling of dread poured over me, and a doorway opened up out of nowhere. This door had not been there before. It was just a stone wall. There were no windows either, and I watched in horror as a hooded black shadow levitated towards me, slowly, inching closer to me. I closed my eyes again and willed myself back to sleep. I willed myself to go back to my room. I prayed to wake up, and then I felt my soul return to my bed. But I wasn't alone, and I was not awake yet. Hello, sleep paralysis. In my sleep, I was able to sense that there was something on me, and I had pulled my covers up over my head somehow. So now this is the part where I don't know if I was dreaming or not, but I remember opening my eyes and seeing through my covers. There was a black shadow tumbleweed. I closed my eyes again, and I hoped it would go away or that I would wake up. I felt the covers move as this creature slipped under them with me. I felt its weight. I felt its hair. I felt its arms. I opened my eyes, and there I was staring into the red eyes and lion-like face and mane. It reached out to my chest with a hand. This hand pressed against me, and its fingers morphed into something like suction cups. It felt hot. The feeling was similar to when you run a marathon and want to vomit. I could sense it was draining me or doing something, and it hurt. I screamed and screamed. I prayed. I was asking Jesus to save me, just like my nanny told me it helped her. And at that moment, my mom burst into my room. It went away. I haven't seen it since, and I still have no idea what was going to happen to me or why. I think I actually blocked it out of my memory because I went years without thinking about it. But I pray to never see it again, and I have kept my promise to my nanny. I have never touched a Ouija board. The Discord has helped me name the demon, an upper-level demon known as President of Hell. Here's a picture. That's the one we referred to. We'll put it in here again. I hope you enjoyed. This is my scariest story. I have not been a fan of the podcast for long. I only discovered it in June of 2023, but it has quickly become a huge part of my journey in learning my spiritual gifts. The community in the Patreon is beautiful, and the Discord offers acceptance to those who are connected with the other side. Until next time, stay spooky, stay maybe a little pervy. Love, Kristen.
Oh my God, Kristen. I feel like this is every single time Kristen comes on Campfire Stories and tells us something, I'm just like, how? It's different hearing it from Kristen herself, who has such a sunny disposition.
Yes.
But the darkest stories.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. Like, lived through so much, haven't you, Kristen? And now it's just the spookiest person. But I feel like I would not be able to function as a human being if I saw this creature. Because it's one thing to see something that stereotypically looks like a demon or a shadow or another person. The image of what she sent it looking like, basically this like lion creature with hooves just everywhere.
Yeah.
I think I'd lose my sense of reality, truly.
Well,
I think I'd spiral.
My question too is, where is this photo from? Because this isn't something Kristen drew. Like, this is something that exists on the internet. So I'm curious if this is like a specific type of demon entity that is known. Has this been experienced by many? It's so unsettling.
That's
and
so
I also
true.
just feel so bad for Kristen's grandmother, who believed she was communicating with her son who had passed away night after night after night after night. And then all of a sudden, this demon comes out of the board and tries to choke her.
I know. It's so traumatizing. See, this is exactly what I was saying. Like, it's so sad because you want to believe that it's this person. But that's why there was a few episodes ago where I was like, I have reluctance towards this story because it does involve like communicating with the same spirit over and over and over on a board.
Yeah.
Which it just seems like something that tends to happen more with demonic presences than anything else.
Yeah.
Because they're like feeding on your energy and then it becomes easier and easier for them to keep coming back. It's so horrible.
It is.
Oh, man.
And this is exactly what I was wanting for my birthday. It's like, I'm so sad and so sorry you experienced this, Kristen, and then everyone else whose emails we're reading in this episode, but also like so glad that you've emailed us because this is the type of stuff I get off on.
All right. Well, I have one for you called I was pressured into participating in an attempted exorcism.
Oh, okay.
I feel like this would be something that I would experience and you'd be the one pressuring me to participate in the exorcism.
Well, okay, it depends. If it's an exorcism of me, Corinne, if you didn't participate in it, I think I would be offended because I know how powerful you are.
I'd probably be the one rallying the troops.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were possessed.
I would never ask you to actually participate in an exorcism that would put you in harm's way. Like when Chad and Carrie Hayes were telling us about that place in India that they went, where that whole town is like a place where people go to perform exorcisms, and the guy there was like, if you want to be possessed by a low-level demon, like I would never put us in that situation.
No. I would shit myself if I still can't believe they did that.
I know, it's so scary.
I so badly want to see, but like I want to see in a way where I want to see it all on camera.
Yeah.
Or like I'm safe. Yeah. I want someone to FaceTime me while they walk around this town. So like I get to put me on like a robot where I can go around and zoom around, but I'm through a screen.
Okay.
Because that seems too scary. But this person did get pressured into maybe an exorcism.
Okay.
Hey girls, I recently found your podcast and I'm officially obsessed. I was listening to Encounters 206 today, and the story about the possession at the church camp reminded me of my own exorcism, or at least attempted exorcism story. So here it is. A little over 2 years ago, I was part of this charismatic house church. I grew up Southern Baptist, so this group was a lot for me at the time, but they were all friends of mine from college, so I figured there was no harm in gathering with them for church on Sundays. Things started out pretty normal for a house church, other than the fact that the leader, and we'll call her Wendy, and a couple other members were convinced that God/Jesus/the Holy Spirit could speak to them directly. We would meet at the leader's house on Sundays, we would sing worship songs with an acoustic guitar, and we would read the Bible together. After about a year of meeting like this, we became a very tight-knit group. However, as time went on, things got more and more uncomfortable. There was a focus on spiritual gifting in this church, which are special abilities that are believed to be given to a person by God when they dedicate their life to him.
Wasn't this like a part of the Rick story too?
I literally can't remember. I just remember Rick like, wait, they did meet at church, didn't they?
Yeah. And he was like talking about the gifts that you have to like give each other and her trying to like have a gift. Yeah, right? I'm pretty sure that was a part of it.
Honestly, we've read the Rick story so many times and I block it out of my memory most times because it's so scary.
Because it's terrifying, yeah.
Wendy strongly believed that she had the gifts of prophecy and discernment and thought that God would directly tell her when members of the church were in sin so that she could encourage them to turn from their sinful ways. This feels like the beginning of a cult leader situation, doesn't it?
It does, but then also if someone actually has the ability to know when you've sinned, like that's the worst.
I mean, it would be all the time.
Right. It's like, just let me sin
all the time.
Let me just eat some candy before dinner, please.
Oh, I have chocolate-covered gummy bears in my counter. I want them so bad now.
I want them.
I can't have them yet. Wendy also thought that she could see undiscovered giftings in others and once tried to make me speak in tongues, which is also considered a spiritual gift, and would pressure me into praying in tongues over other people. I never really knew how to speak in tongues, so I would just kind of say gibberish to get Wendy off my case. So it was the opposite of a good time. Anyways, one day I was working from home at my apartment and I got a call from Wendy where she asked me to come to another member of our group's apartment. We'll call this guy Mark. Mark lived in the same complex as me, so his building was only a short walk away. When I got there, Wendy was waiting outside the building and informed me that God told her Mark was possessed by a demon. I was shocked because Mark was a Christian and Wendy said that Christians can be possessed too if they agree to let the demon in, and apparently Mark had done just that. She told me the name of the demon, but I can't remember which one it was. She said that she needed me to help her fast and to pray for the demon to leave, and that I shouldn't be scared because this demon was a bug under God's foot. I was obviously terrified, but I went in anyway because I really didn't want to disappoint Wendy.
No.
I have never felt such heaviness walking into a room before. I had been in that apartment many times, but this time the energy was very different.
Oh, gosh.
Mark was lying on the floor in the living room, and we sat around him. Wendy told me to start praying, and Mark started writhing on the floor. it seemed to come in waves. He would speak in a really low, abnormal voice, saying horrible things about the people in the room. He would grab at his throat like he was choking, and then he would settle for a bit before the next wave would come. And this went on for hours.
Oh my gosh.
Other members
Mark.
of the church came as well. And when things got really intense and Wendy started pressuring me to pray in tongues, I was horrified. Finally, around 11 p.m., it just stopped. Mark and Wendy said it was gone, but I was traumatized. I honestly don't know if there was actually a demon in Mark or if all of this was just because of the power of suggestion. Either way, something came home with me because I went to bed that night and I could not fall asleep because I could see a figure standing in the corner of my room staring at me. So I just laid awake, terrified.
Oh my God. This is so horrifying.
I know. This happened a number of times before I moved out of this apartment later that year. One time I woke up a little after midnight to my computer mouse having somehow been turned over, illuminating my room in the red light. I freaked out and I called my boyfriend to come over and stay the night because there was no way I was going to fall asleep again alone in that room. I moved out of that apartment. I left that church. I started therapy and deconstructed, and I haven't experienced anything like that since. So, church trauma for the win. Thank you for taking the time to read my story from Bethany.
God, Bethany, I am so sorry that you experienced this, but like, it does really seem like there was a real dark demonic entity impacting Mark.
I know, it's kind of confusing though, because part of me was like, Bethany would speak in tongues because Wendy wanted her to.
Right.
So like, did Mark pretend to be possessed because Wendy thought he was?
But then regardless of if any of that was real, if it was real, the entity must have followed Bethany home and was like lurking and being like, look, I do exist.
Yeah.
Or if it wasn't real and it was all like Wendy's like, power of suggestion, literally conjured up something negative that then followed
That's
Bethany
true.
home, which is still just
there
as
was so
scary.
much fear to eat on amongst the group there because everyone was terrified. So it's like, what better meal than a group of people who are so afraid of demons for a demon to come and be like, yum, yum, yum. I'm coming home with you.
Eat it up. Ugh, gosh, Bethany, I'm glad that you were able to step away from this group and then deconstruct this trauma that you endured, especially because I feel like whatever this group was, it was very much like, rather than talking through everything and being like, Bethany, do you have questions? Like, ask me about this. Like, this is what I believe is going on. Do you have questions? Let's talk through it. It was very much like, this is the reality. You have no time or place to actually ask questions and figure it out. Like, you're here, we're in it, and we're doing this. And it's just like,
It's very intense.
Very.
Very intense.
Oh,
I'm overcome.
the sleep demon.
The sleep demon is after me. But it does make me want to re-listen to the Rick episode now.
Well, it is that time. Actually, you should listen to it now before October because gosh knows what happens when October happens. Also,
True.
it just got so utterly cold in here. Like, as you were reading that story, the temperature, like, truly, I have goosebumps. My hair is sticking up on end.
So maybe it doesn't matter if it's October or not. It's just whenever we read a cluster of dark, demonic stories, things happen. Oh, I'm starting to get freaked out.
Okay, well, I have a somewhat shorter one from our listener, Shayna. I think that's how you say it, or Shania, not sure. But it's called Demonic Stories from My Dad. Hello. I have multiple stories about demonic possession and just evil spirits in general that were all told to me by my dad a couple years ago. Some of the details might be a little foggy because I felt weird asking my dad to go through these stories again. But these all happened to my dad when he was younger, or they are stories he heard about from his family or neighbors. So the first one is about a family and their haunted house. My dad lived most of his life in Guyana, a country in South America. It was originally owned by the Dutch, therefore there are multiple haunted Dutch burial grounds all over the country. Well, a house on my dad's street was built on one of these burial grounds and, of course, became haunted. People would say that they'd see figures walk around upstairs through the windows, or neighbors would hear loud noises coming from the house when no one was home. The most prominent story that my dad told me was about a family who moved there when he was younger. It was a mother, a father, and their baby. The mother's parents apparently didn't approve of the marriage, which is a somewhat important detail. Basically, the man became possessed by a demon, which drove a wedge between their marriage. And trigger warning for homicide and suicide and a lot of dark, gruesome murder details. One night, the wife went to stay at her sister's house with their baby and left the husband at home alone. That night, the husband found his wife and child and murdered them and took his own life. It was said that the girl's parents went to someone who practiced black magic and put a curse on the couple's marriage so their daughter would leave her husband. The second story is pretty short and more of an unexplained situation. Before my dad's grandmother died, she made the wish that only her grandsons would carry her casket at her funeral. Well, my dad told me that at her funeral, he and his cousins and brothers carried her casket and found it to be very light. She was a small woman near her death. However, when they switched off with the other men who were not her grandsons, the casket became very heavy, like it was filled with rocks. This, of course, only happened when they switched, passing the casket over to men who were not her grandsons.
Wait, this reminds me a little bit of Hannah Grana.
It does. Yeah, that's such a good point. Like, follow my orders.
These are not my wishes, so I'm going to make this extremely difficult on you.
Yeah. The third story is one my dad heard about when he was younger, as he was friends with the kids who it happened to. So there was a family with lots of kids all around the same age who would spend their evenings doing homework together. One night, one of the siblings wasn't with the others doing homework. So naturally, his siblings went to his room to look for him, and they found him convulsing as he had drank poison. They got him help quickly,
Oh, no.
and once he was capable of speaking again, they asked him why he drank the poison. He then said that on his way home from school, he saw a black cat, and the cat told him that if he did not drink the poison that night, all of his siblings would die.
What the fuck?
I don't really understand this one, but maybe there's something you guys can make from it. Anyway, the last. I know.
So upsetting.
The last, and in my opinion, strangest story is one my dad experienced himself. So there was always this running joke between my siblings and my dad that my grandmother had an exorcism when she was younger. I never believed it, but at the time, I did kind of because that is the country's culture. Turns out it was real and did actually happen.
Holy
But
shit.
I really don't understand why, and my grandma doesn't like to talk about it. My dad told me that my grandmother's mom passed away when my grandmother was about middle age. Around this time, my grandma started having nightmares about her mother. Maybe they weren't nightmares to her, but I think it's scary enough to be a nightmare because in these dreams, her mother would tell her to join her and that it was time for her to be with her. My dad said that later, my grandmother eventually became possessed by her mother's spirit. My dad said that during the exorcism, my grandmother levitated off the floor in the chair she was sitting in. They were able to cleanse her of the spirit and seemingly everything went back to normal. It's kind of an anticlimactic, scary story, but I don't think my grandma would ever tell me about it because she's a little spooked by it, but it's definitely something I want to know more about. Anyway, I love your podcast and listen to it anytime I make the drive home from college. Shania or Shayna.
Wow. This is wild. I'm most disturbed, even though I really should be disturbed by all of it, but I'm most disturbed by the cat trying to manipulate that boy.
To drink poison.
Especially being in an, yes. And because animals, we think of animals as being so innocent and like children love animals. And so of course you're going to trust a cat. The cat is giving you good information. It's much different if it's like a scary monster who's like, drink the poison or everyone dies. And even that could definitely persuade someone to drink the poison. But for a cat to be like, I'm warning you, you have to do this or everyone in your family will die. Trust me, because I'm a loving, beautiful cat.
Although I wonder if it was Loving Beautiful Cat or if it was like Scary Witch in the Woods cat. And I'm also curious because I don't know anything about this culture necessarily in Guyana. Like I'm curious if there is some type of lore or legend about the like cat creature, you know, similar to a Windy Boy or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it seems like they went through a lot. The fact that her grandmother literally, wait, was it her grandmother or her mother that was possessed?
It was her grandmother possessed by the great-grandmother.
And literally levitated in the chair, which is also, it's hard for me to accept that it was the great-grandmother possessing the grandmother when there was the levitation. Like, I'm not sure about that.
Also, the like, it's time for you to join me. We have to be together. No, like that's similar to Kristen's story. It's like you think you're talking to someone, but they're just utilizing your sorrow and your loss of that person to manipulate you.
It's like that movie that came out last year. Oh my God, it was so good. It's one of my favorite horror movies and I can't remember it.
Talk to Me?
Where you shake the hand. Talk to Me.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much like that.
Terrifying.
Where she's seeing her mom.
Mm-hmm. Spooky.
Okay. I have another one. And it's called Horrifying Haunted Hotel Room at the Estes Park Resort.
Oh.
Have you ever been to that resort? Because you went to the Stanley Hotel.
I've not been to the
Which is over
Estes
there.
Park Resort. I guess I didn't even know there was another haunted hotel over there.
I guess there is.
Okay.
Hi, ladies. My name is Simi, she, her, and I've been listening to you guys since mid-2019. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, and I was so happy to meet you guys at the Denver live show in November with my friend Laura. And I used to think that I didn't really have many paranormal experiences, but seeing as this is the 7th story that I'm sending to you, clearly I was wrong in thinking that.
I feel like Simi is one of those people who like it's just so part of their lives growing up, and like their family just accepts it so openly that it's not until adulthood it's like, oh, you guys don't have demons just in your house all the time? Cool.
Cool. The stories I've sent to you have been super out of chronological order, so sorry about that, but I tend to just write down the emails as encounters pop back into my brain. Perfect way to do it. That's exactly what we want you to do. This story takes place in April of 2020 during my close friend's wedding. I was still living in San Diego at the time, but my friend, let's call her Kay, lives in the suburb of Denver, and my husband and I also live in the same suburb of Denver and have lived in the Denver area now for about a year and a half. She and her husband got married at the Estes Park Resort in Estes Park, Colorado. And for anyone who's unfamiliar, Estes Park is the town where the famously haunted Stanley Hotel is located, and the Estes Park Resort is only about 10 minutes from there by car.
Oh, shoot. Missed opportunity.
I know. Estes Park is a town built in a valley about 1.5 hours northwest of Denver near Rocky Mountain National Park. It's known for being haunted by spirits and by aggressive elk in the fall during rut season.
Yep.
It's said to also be spiritually active due to the quartz bedrock in the area, and I definitely feel weird vibes whenever we drive up there, even if it's just a hike. That being said, it is absolutely stunning, and I highly recommend visiting if you can. I was the maid of honor, and I was the only bridesmaid for the wedding, so I flew into Denver a few days early to help Kay and her now husband Jay prepare for the wedding. My husband couldn't come due to being out at sea. Thank you, Navy. So I was attending by myself, and this was sadly something I got very used to while my husband was on active duty. The wedding was on Saturday, so Friday morning we drove both of their cars packed full of wedding decorations up to Estes to unload and get ready for the rehearsal and the dinner that evening. We all checked into our rooms, and Kay and Jay were obviously staying in the bridal suite, and I had booked a regular room. The Estes Park Resort is built into this small hill right on the lake, and it consists of quite a few buildings. The biggest building is the hotel/restaurant, but there is an open-air lodge overlooking the lake and the log cabins strewn throughout the property. Oh, this sounds so gorgeous.
That sounds so beautiful. Now part of me is wondering if I actually did go and eat breakfast there.
Oh, really?
I'll have to look up pictures.
Yeah. The hotel of the building is made up of 3 floors. Kay and Jay were staying on the 3rd floor, and my room was on the 1st floor. You enter through the 2nd floor and have to go up to the 3rd floor or down to the 1st. Because of the hill, half the rooms on the 1st floor are walkouts with a gorgeous lake view, and the other half are essentially underground with tiny windows up near the ceiling. Guess which one I had? LOL. The room was nicely furnished and had a stunning bathroom, but it was definitely given creepy basement vibes. I was also the only wedding attendee on the 1st floor. Suspicious.
Yeah.
The first night was unsettling, but passed uneventfully, thanks to being out late with friends after the rehearsal dinner and having to be up early for hair and makeup the next morning. So I didn't really sleep well, but I did sleep. The wedding also passed uneventfully, and it was so much fun. I hung out with the same friends in their hotel room until about 2:30 a.m. when I decided it was time to retreat to my basement room. I don't remember being scared to return to my room, but my friend S read between the lines and offered for me to sleep in their room on the pull-out couch, but I declined, not wanting to disturb her and her husband, and arrived back to my room around 2:45 a.m. Oh man, I wish I'd taken S up on her offer.
Hey.
I was, not sober in the slightest. The altitude really can get you if you're not used to it. And I know how to handle myself and always do my full skincare routine at night, sober or not. So I did end up getting into bed around 3 a.m. I fell asleep very quickly, and so began one of the worst nights of my life.
Oh no.
I was asleep for about an hour when I jolted awake, filled with dread and nausea. I ran to the bathroom to vomit, and then I stumbled back to the bed to go back to sleep. But this time, however, sleep did not find me quickly.
Oh, no.
Every time I closed my eyes, I saw a group of misshapen, grotesque figures standing in a semicircle around my bed. They were dressed in early 1900s clothing in muted, dark colors, and I remember vividly that there was a man in the center wearing a bowler-style hat and a dark brown three-piece suit. He was hunched over, and he was grinning maniacally right at me with these glowing yellow eyes. The other figures were a combination of women and men with various injuries and disfigurements. All of them were shrouded in shadows, almost like they had one foot in another realm, and their faces were obscured. It was absolutely horrifying.
I hate that they're like standing around her in like a ritualistic, almost like she's the sacrifice of some kind.
It also makes me think everybody else, like that the grinning man is the one who's responsible for like the deaths of all the others. It's like the victims and the...
Yeah, like he's collecting their souls and she's going to be added to the circle, or they want Simi to be added to their circle.
I was immediately filled with the overwhelming dread and nausea again, and I ran back to the bathroom, turning on all of the lights as I went. I stayed in the bathroom longer than necessary because I was horrified and I did not want to go back into that bed. I briefly considered going back to S's room, but it was past 4 a.m. and I didn't want to disturb her or her husband. And I didn't really know anyone else at the wedding other than Kay and Jay and Kay's parents, but I wasn't going to bother any of them for obvious reasons. What was I supposed to say? My room had a bunch of evil spirits in it? Only Kay would believe me, and I wasn't about to ruin her wedding night. I decided to leave the bathroom light on and try to go back to sleep. I reluctantly dragged myself back to the bed, and I was met with the same horrifying sight when I closed my eyes. Except this time, the figures were much closer, like they'd all taken a big step closer to my bed. My eyes flew back open, and I laid there trying to calm myself down. I know some spirits feed off of fear, and I'll be damned if I let something take advantage of me like that. If you've read my other stories, you know I get angry when spirits try so hard to get my attention in a negative way, lol. I immediately did the ribbon wrapping technique, and then I closed my eyes again. To my dismay, the figures were even closer, and the feeling of dread was increasing. I felt like there was this heavy weight sitting on my chest, keeping me in the bed. Heart racing, this time I attempted my tried and true method of picturing myself in the building and pushing a ring of golden light out from myself. I've used this to remove negative energy from my home before and would remove a poltergeist from my next rental house about 2 years after this event. But this did nothing.
Oh, no.
I could feel the spirits fighting me, and I was too exhausted and scared and sick to my stomach to effectively do anything. Every time I closed my eyes, they would be closer to the bed, and I knew that something terrible was going to happen if I let them reach me.
It's just so unfair because there's like how many of them versus you? You're by yourself, and there's like 7 of them.
It's a whole group.
Yeah.
And you're drunk. That's not fair. They're taking advantage of you. It's not. Although I will say, if you're drunk, you're a little more fearless. So maybe that part is good.
Mm-hmm.
The dread and nausea were constantly increasing, and every time I even blinked, I would see the figures getting closer and closer until they were so close to my bed I could reach out and touch them if I wanted. It was now almost 5 a.m. and I decided enough was enough. I launched myself out of the bed. I grabbed my phone, a pillow, the comforter, and my glasses. I threw on all of the lights and I ran to the bathroom. This was the only place in the room that I felt safe in so far. So I closed and I locked the bathroom door and immediately redid the ribbon wrapping technique. And then in my mind's eye, I pictured a golden shield around myself extending to encompass just the bathroom. I infused this with every ounce of determination and anger that I had in my body while I set up this makeshift bed on the bathroom floor. I stayed up maintaining my protective methods until a little after 6 a.m. once the sun started to come up. I quickly fell asleep after
3.5 hours of doing this.
And with very little sleep the night before, too. Like, this is, you couldn't be more exhausted at this point.
Jeez.
After a wedding and everything. I quickly fell asleep after, and I didn't wake up until Kay came to wonder where I was. We were supposed to leave by 9:30 to get back to Kay and Jay's house in time to set up for a late lunch that they were hosting for the wedding guests. I scrambled to get my shit together, and then I had to drive their Jeep loaded with decorations down windy mountain roads back to Denver while intensely hungover, sleep-deprived, and scared shitless. It was horrible. And I ended up removing myself from the luncheon later that day to nap upstairs in a guest room. I waited until after the lunch party to tell Kay and Jay about my night, and they were both horrified. We spent the evening researching the Estes Park resort to see if we could find anything about these spirits or demons, but we came up with nothing. The resort was established in 2001, which was pretty recent, and we couldn't find anything about the property beforehand other than that it was a drive-in movie theater. I do know that humans have lived in the Estes Park area for at least 12,000 years, so there's plenty of time for the land to have become haunted. These
Yeah.
spirits were obviously white colonists, though, and definitely early 1900s based on their clothing. This was the most terrifying paranormal experience I've ever personally had, and I think about it whenever I go to Estes Park, which is honestly pretty frequently. I do love the area, even though the resort really freaks me out. I did end up returning to the resort last year in September of 2022 for Jay's birthday. Kay surprised him with us and some of his other friends, and we had a nice dinner at the Estes Park Resort's restaurant, and then we went on a night tour of the Stanley Hotel.
Fun.
My husband got to be included this time since he's no longer a slave to the Navy, haha. Of course, because Jay and I both really wanted to experience something paranormal that evening. Absolutely nothing happened. One of their friends did have a ghost grab her butt during a Stanley tour, though.
Oh, curvy ghosts.
More recently, in April of this year, one of my friends from San Diego came to visit and wanted to do a, quote, hard Colorado hike. So we hiked up to Kruger Rock near Estes Park. The very top of this trail is almost 10,000 feet and requires some rock scrambling to get there. We had to carry the dogs up the last bit, and my friend ended up breaking her finger. From the very top, you have this gorgeous bird's eye view of Estes Park, and the second I found the resort with my eyes, I got the chills. And for a brief moment, I felt that overwhelming dread before I was able to shake myself out of it.
Oh,
Anyway,
gosh.
That's all for this tale. I think at some point, I will have submitted a story for every paranormal experience that I've had so far in my 28 years of life. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to hear it on the podcast. You guys are the best and get me through long hours at my corporate desk job. Stay spooky and see you on the other side, Simi.
Simi. Okay, so I did look it up. I definitely had breakfast at this hotel, but
You did!
yeah, I did. But it's interesting because like Simi said, they looked it up and there's no record or like no stories of any hauntings. So it's not well known for being haunted, but the Stanley Hotel is built on top of quartz. And like they have said, like they think based on the rocks it's built on has perpetuated and made it even more haunted. So I wouldn't be surprised if just 10 minutes down the road, this Estes Park Resort is built upon similar rock.
And Simi's bedroom was the one that was
The basement.
like the one side of the first floor is built into the rock face.
Right. So you got the most haunted room. And I just wonder what they are. It feels like this is like a group of malicious spirits that are traveling together throughout the area. And how Simi was talking about when they were on the hike, that similar feeling of dread returned. Like, did they find her again for a second?
I know, that is so ominous for that feeling to return and then to try to like put your shield up again to push it out. It's like they do have this tether, this attachment. They know when Simi's around.
It's so interesting because usually you hear like the bathroom is like a creepy place, but the fact that the bathroom was the one place of solace, which I'm glad finally you were able to get a little bit of sleep. But geez.
Right, at least there was a safe space within the hotel room.
Yeah.
I would have been sleeping in the lobby.
Seriously. Okay, so I have something to end us with. And back in, I think it was like February, March, where we read a story about landlady Lola having a really tough time dealing with dark encounters. So our listener, Megan, actually sent us an email and sent a lot of suggestions and ways to help hopefully protect yourself against dark entities. So I wanted to share that with everyone and hopefully provide some type of help and assistance to anyone if you experience anything like our listeners have just shared with you, or if you just are curious. So this is from our listener, Megan. And she says, "Hi, ladies. I've gone through what Lola is currently facing, and I'm talking nobody will ever believe me kind of crazy demonic activity, banging on walls, black hooded figures, foul smells, nightmares, being strangled, sleep and waking paralysis, animals in danger, the real stuff.
We believe you.
But here are the things that really helped me and made a difference while I was in the thick of it. So I hope it helps Lola, and I hope it helps all of you. Best of luck. So much love to Lola and to you both, Megan. No fear. Absolute elimination of fear. This is a toughie, but it's huge. No one in the home partaking in any mind-altering substances. No alcohol, no marijuana, etc. Deep clean the home. Remove all clutter, down to the litter box and cobwebs in the corner. Demonic entities love to nest in darkness and any kind of mess or potential filth. Do not speak about the activity happening inside of the home. Where attention goes, energy flows. Do not feed them with energy. Do not speak to the entities under any circumstances, even to tell them they are worthless and powerless, etc. do not acknowledge their presence. If you do, it can make things exponentially worse. And the only exception to this is to call on the name of Christ or whatever higher power you believe in while a direct attack is happening. Still, call in divine and angelic protection, but don't address the entity directly. Stop any and all divination practices that could currently be happening. Ouija, tarot, pendulums, transcendental meditation, palm reading, etc. There's a place for all of these things, but until the oppression and possession of the home and person is over, it can't happen because they can utilize it to make things worse. Practice psychic protection. Practice every morning and before bed. White bubble protection, ribbon wrapping, or like Simi did in a building, the envisioning the light bubble.
Yes.
Couple this with grounding exercises. Unfortunately, spiritual sensitives attract these things, and we have to learn to control our gifts, or this can happen in the future. For immediate attacks that are bad, get in the shower. Running water seems to break the energetic influence. A warm rag soaked in salt water around the neck is also helpful if a shower is not an immediate and available option. Burn frankincense, resin, sage, and Palo Santo. Won't touch it. Let as much natural light into the space as possible. If that's difficult, you can use light bulbs and just let as much light in. Regularly have a spiritual person, medium, or healer walk through the home to keep the darkness at bay until it finally lifts. It's also helpful to get energy healing, Reiki or something similar, to restore energy, body, and clear trauma, hooks, cords, and dark energetic attachments. It's critical these energy centers are healed and sealed off so these things can't come back in.
These are great pieces of advice. I've never thought about the running water and just taking a shower and try to just like literally cleanse yourself underwater. That's such a good tip.
I literally was feeling anxious this morning and I just laid in the shower.
Let the rain fall
Truly.
down.
It's such a cleansing thing for me. It just feels good.
Well, I guess like with demonic possessions, I'm like, and just darkness just permeating through every inch of your house, I'd be kind of afraid to take a shower, but it's a good suggestion for sure. All of these are great tips. I also do agree. I think I said it in the episode that we were recording because they said burn frankincense resin, sage and Palo Santo, wouldn't touch it. And I told you that in my brother's bedroom when there were these dark cloaked figures going around in circles, we couldn't get them out with anything except for it would be white copal resin and dragon's blood resin. We would smoke those.
That's so interesting.
And it would work for a period of time.
And also keep in mind, like, there are certain things that may work for you that don't work for other people, but these are options for you to try if you are out of other options or the things that you are used to doing or have been taught to do aren't working. But I would be curious. I feel like a lot of our listeners have so many of their own practices. It might be helpful to like even do an episode down the line where it's truly just like protective practices.
Yeah, totally.
So send those into us.
That's a great call.
And also if you've been possessed or if you've seen a demon or an exorcism, please email that to us, or any paranormal encounter. Please email it to us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. Spooky season's coming, you guys. Whether you want it or not, it is coming, and we are full force, full throttle. What did I say we are? We're Halloween hounds. We're coming for you.
We're coming for you. You can also come for all of your friends by telling them about our podcast. And you can rate and review wherever you listen. Abduct them. Get them into our spaceship. Ghosts live forever. You can also watch us on YouTube. And if you're interested in getting all of the episodes ad-free 1 week early, plus an extra episode every single month, you can go check out our Patreon. We have other cool perks there too, like weekly campfire stories where we tell ghost stories live with you guys on stage with us, and also book clubs.
Yes. Also join us on social media and join our MLM pyramid scheme. Just tell all your friends about us. We love you all so much. Thank you for listening. And thank you to our editor and producer, Jamie Ryan, for editing and producing all of our audio and video. We're so grateful for you. And we're also so grateful for all of you who listen.
And we will see you on the other side. And happy birthday, Sabrina!